What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today we're going to talk about the US government shutdown and why it's likely to be bullish for the crypto market. If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So I'm sure you guys have all heard by now that, I guess as of 2 hours ago roughly, the US government has shut down because basically Republicans and Democrats were unable to agree to a spending bill. And basically what that means is that now the government's going to be closed, a bunch of people are going to be laid off, and you might think, at first glance that this is something that's super bearish, especially because it's something that happens pretty rarely. The last two big government shutdowns, one was in 2013 and one was in 2018. And what I pointed out to you guys on Monday was that in both of those cases in government shutdowns, it would cause the US dollar to fall, the DXY to fall, and that this is exactly what we want to see if we want to get an altcoin season, because in previous crypto cycles, you'll see that when the DXY started falling, kind of like in a medium-term downtrend, the first leg lower would correspond to a Bitcoin rally, then there would be a little bit of chop, and then the second leg lower would correspond to an altcoin season. That's what we saw in 2017, that's what we saw in 2020 and 2021, and I don't think this time is different, and I think that we're going to get a drop in the DXY, and of course the only question is, what would cause that drop lower in the DXY? And in case it wasn't clear enough, the answer is probably the US government shutdown. If we zoom in here to the DXY on the 4-hour, you can see that it's basically been collapsing ever since markets started pricing in the likelihood of a government shutdown. Now that the shutdown has actually happened, we can see here on the 4-hour candle, the DXY is really starting to roll over. There is a little bit of support on the daily, and the other thing to keep in mind is that the effects of the government shutdown on the DXY, they might not be immediate. Historically speaking, there tends to be a little bit of volatility at the beginning, whether it's in markets or in the DXY. So don't be surprised if in the next couple of days you just kind of see a lot of chop, but then as the shutdown continues, or even after it resolves, that's when the DXY should really start to accelerate lower, and when we should really start to see a positive impact on the markets. And if you don't trust my analysis for whatever reason, then don't take it from me. You can look at other macro analysts who are basically seeing the same thing that I am, because at the end of the day, I'm basically just following their research and telling you guys what I think makes sense. But here's a few facts to keep in mind. So the average length of a shutdown is only 8 days, but of course, average doesn't tell you much. That it's like average versus median, that type of stuff. The S&P 500 has ended 1 year higher after a shutdown in 86% of cases, which doesn't really tell us much. Let's be real, we're not talking about 1 year here. S&P 500 posts an average gain of 13% 1 year after the shutdown ends, which again isn't really helpful in the near term. But here's the one that is helpful. During the 35-day shutdown in 2018, which was also under Trump, the S&P 500 rallied by 11%. And if you go back in time, of course, Bitcoin was literally at the end of its bear market at the end of 2018. But you can see that Bitcoin actually did rally in response to the shutdown. And then again here, while the government is shut down, the U.S. defers $400 million a day in costs. The Fed generally turns more dovish if government data releases are paused. So that's another big one, right? Everyone's saying, oh, we need rate cuts, we need rate cuts. Well, I have good news for you. When the government is shut down, then that increases the chances that the Fed is going to cut rates and be more dovish, which of course is supportive of the markets. And of course, the conclusion here is that historically, the market actually welcomes shutdowns, with welcomes in all caps. Thank you, Kobeisi Letter, for that insight. Anyways, so we can see proof of this as well, guys. If we look on the daily for Bitcoin, you can see that Bitcoin was rallying in the last few days. It actually did bounce roughly where I was expecting. If you guys were watching last week's video, last week was pretty tense, I'm not going to lie. But I was pointing out that, look, the RSI on the daily is way too oversold. Bitcoin will be getting a bounce from this level, because that's exactly what happened in previous instances when the RSI got that oversold. Lo and behold, Bitcoin finally started bouncing, and we were finally starting to see bounces in altcoins. But again, that's probably not going to come until we get that proper breakdown in the DXY, which is it going to happen immediately today or tomorrow? Probably not. It'll take a couple of days, but in the next week or two, don't be surprised to see the DXY rolling over, especially when you can see on the weekly that we're getting a nice Bollinger Band squeeze. And what that means is that there's going to be a huge move in the DXY, either higher or lower. And of course, with the government shutdown, the chances of it going lower are basically, exponentially higher than the chances that it's going to go higher. But anyways, back to Bitcoin, you can see that Bitcoin is now on the daily. It's basically painting a bull flag here. So don't be surprised if by the time you see this video, Bitcoin is back up to around 117 or 118,000, which you can see, of course, is a key zone of resistance. And then who knows, maybe there'll be a rejection there, a little bit of chop, but expect a chop, let's say roughly between 114,000 to 117,000. That would probably be the kind of base case for Bitcoin in the next couple of days, that you get a little bit of chop. Probably see something similar in altcoins, but we'll get to those in just a second. First, I do need to tell you guys, if you're enjoying this video, then head down to the description, click on this little more icon here, and then see this first deal where it says BitGet, get up to 50,000 USDT deposit bonus. Just click that link. It'll take you to a page that looks like this. It's an exclusive deal that we managed to get with BitGet through a partnership between the Coin Bureau and BitGet. And of course, to get this 50,000 USDT bonus, you do have to do quite a few things, which, most people can't do. But on a personal note, I will say that BitGet is an exchange that I've used personally. It's one that, in my opinion, is pretty good. I've never had any issues with it whatsoever. I'm speaking purely from personal experience. So if you are looking for a crypto exchange that's good, again, this is not just for, contrary to popular belief, it's not just like futures trading. They also have spot markets, and BitGet is one of these exchanges that's, I would say is up and coming is not the right way to put it, but it's definitely a really awesome exchange, and I would suggest checking it out and giving it a try at least, just to see if it's something that's right for you. And again, when you use that link in the description, it helps you out, gives you a little bit of bonuses potentially, and it helps us out, and of course, it helps out our partner. Anyways, so moving on to altcoins, I want to look at things specifically through the lens of Bitcoin, because of course, I'm sure a lot of people, everyone is in this Bitcoin dominance rising narrative, and of course, Bitcoin dominance has seen a bounce in the last few days. There's no denying that. But the thing is, guys, that, at the end of the day, Bitcoin dominance, like most of these indices in crypto, Bitcoin dominance is arguably primarily measuring ETH BTC and Sol BTC. Like, it's measuring the BTC pairs of the largest and most volatile altcoins, like most volatile being a key word there, because you have something like XRP where the price has basically been trading sideways, and that doesn't really tell you much about, like, it's probably not having that much of a weight on Bitcoin dominance, right? If that makes any sense. But basically, if you look under the hood of Bitcoin dominance, what you see is that the two largest components, or the largest components, are basically altcoins, like large altcoins like Ethereum versus BTC. And as I've noted here, guys, like you can see that on the weekly chart here for ETH BTC, could ETH BTC go a little bit lower? Sure, but it's pretty close to hitting a low here. And if we can actually see the same thing on the weekly chart for Solana, is you can see that there's kind of like a double bottom pattern forming here, and now Solana is just kind of getting a pretty standard pullback, you could say, in the Sol BTC chart. And same thing for ETH BTC here. There was a huge run up. Now you're getting a pretty standard pullback, which almost looks like it's over. And same idea for Sol. Could it go a little bit lower against Bitcoin? Sure. That doesn't mean that Solana is going to crash, by the way. If Bitcoin is rallying, then that means that everything will rally. It just means that Ethereum and Solana would rally less, right? That's what people don't understand about Bitcoin dominance. But if you can see again that ETH BTC looks like it's basically close to a bottom within a couple of percentages, that Sol BTC is close to a bottom within a couple of percentages, maybe it's already there. And then you look at the Bitcoin dominance chart and you see people saying, oh, it's going to rally all the way up to 65% or some crazy percentage. Like, to be honest, on the weekly chart, just based on my own kind of trusty Bollinger Bands, on the weekly, sure, maybe there could be a rally up to something around like 60, maybe 61% on Bitcoin dominance, which again wouldn't necessarily translate to a crash in altcoins. It could just be that there's some bullish news related to Bitcoin that causes Bitcoin to really pump hard, and then everything else is just kind of chopping, trying to find its footing and catch up. That's probably what's going to happen in the next week or two here, where Bitcoin is basically going to be the most resilient. Everything else is kind of getting its shoes on, trying to get out the door, and Bitcoin's already running, if that makes any sense. And again, like we can see this very clearly on the daily, Bitcoin is looking really good here, and it looks like it's going to get another thrust higher. And if it can break above that 117 or 118,000 level, it's probably going to go straight for new all-time highs. And during that period, altcoins could still be like, oh, like what's going on here? Like what are we gonna do? But in all seriousness, the idea that Bitcoin dominance could go a little bit higher, that's not completely crazy. What is crazy is this idea that Bitcoin dominance is going to get some huge surge, like for the whole month of October and November, and then later this year is only when we're going to get the drop in Bitcoin dominance. I don't think so. And again, guys, you can see this very simply just by looking at ETH BTC, Sol BTC, and basically charts like it, where you can see that already these two big altcoins have already kind of seen most of their losses relative to Bitcoin in the last, like, let's say month and a half roughly, right? So that suggests that Bitcoin dominance is probably not going to rise that much more, and it's going to continue rolling over sooner than people think. The last thing that I'll mention, and this is something I'll be diving into, I think, over the weekend as well, is that if you look at Bitcoin dominance on the monthly, you can actually see that there was a little bit of a bounce, like from a purely technical perspective. There was a bounce on this like monthly Bollinger Band line, and maybe I'll actually remove these indicators so it's a little bit clearer to see. So you can see that the monthly Bollinger Band moving average Of course, on the way up, it's kind of like resistance, and on the way down, it's support. And, is there going to be some massive bounce from this level? I mean, maybe. Like, of course, anything is possible. But from a technical perspective, it would make sense that there'd be a little bit of a bounce around this level and then just like a sharp continuation lower. Long-winded way of saying is that I expect by the end of this month that Bitcoin dominance will be much lower than where it is now, not higher. And of course, again, that doesn't mean that Bitcoin dominance can't bounce in the next few days here. Maybe it will get a little bit of a rally again, like up to 60% or something like that, just in the next week or two, as the market's trying to get it, find its footing and like digest whatever's going on around the government shutdown, which again can result in a little bit of volatility in the short term. But by the end of the month, like by the end of October, Bitcoin dominance is going to be back in a strong downtrend. And again, the simple reason being is that if we just look on the monthly, that's exactly what happened every single time when Bitcoin dominance starts breaking down. It just goes straight down. Like, I don't think we're going to get another scenario where there's just like a huge Bitcoin dominance rally. I think it goes straight down. And people forget that, as cycles become more mature, you could say, some people think that as cycles become more mature, things take longer. But I think in this case, you could make the argument that things happen a little bit faster, that people, they know what to expect. They're anticipating, like a December cycle top in altcoins. And all of this kind of gets pulled forward by a couple of months. But anyways, I'll be discussing that a little bit more, I guess, on Saturday. But if you guys did make it this far and you did find that information helpful, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you next one.